Hello and welcome to this Wednesday edition of the Pipebomb Wrestling Podcast, the show that is for the fans, by the fans. I am your phenomenal host, Mr. Podcasting, Chris Belcher. You can follow me at Chris Belcher24 on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The show is at PBW Podcast on all those platforms as well, so make sure you give us a follow. Interact with us on social media. We want to talk about what you want to hear about, and the best way for us to figure that out is for interaction on social media. So come on, like, comment, share, all of those things. We would appreciate it very much. Also, make sure you give some love to our partners, bodyslam.net. They produce some incredible news on their website, as well as make sure you're subscribed to their YouTube channel. That way you get the video version of our show, as well as all the other great shows on the network. Also, make sure you throw some love and support to SportsWire Radio. The audio version of our show is available every Monday and Wednesday on their show. So make sure you throw Tom and those guys some support over there. And if you like your podcast in traditional audio platform, you can always subscribe to our show on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and all of those spots in between. I have rambled a whole lot, ladies and gentlemen. If you're sick of me, you can go ahead and hit the stop button because I'm going to be here all day. My name is Chris Belcher, and with me, as always, is my co-host, the Young Buck. Ladies and gentlemen, the indie darling Andy York. What's the haps, man? How's it going?
Pretty good. Just getting over Christmas and allergies and everything else, man. It's been a rough week, but I'm excited to be back talking about wrestling.
Man, people don't understand. We talk about this all the time, and maybe they believe us now, maybe they don't. But every now and then, you and I will come on here and we'll be, hacking and be like, you know what, I'm going to try to get through this, but my allergies, man, when you travel outside of Tennessee, your allergies get jacked up, man. It really does.
Yeah, especially when you fly, because that's what we did, and it was just, it was a nightmare. So,
but we're going to power through. We're going to power through. We got a lot to get to, but we would be remiss if we did not stop and wish everybody, again, a very Merry Christmas. Hope you had a wonderful time with your family. Hope you incorporated some Pipebomb Wrestling Podcast time in your travels. And Happy New Year coming up this weekend. Of course, that will commence with the Day 1 pay-per-view that's coming up on Saturday night. We will have full coverage of that this weekend as well. We're going to preview that card for you, but before we get there, we got to talk about AEW. Some big things happened in the world of AEW this past week. One of them, of course, being the debut of Kyle O'Reilly. But I would argue that in that segment of Dynamite, something just as big happened. And that was that Adam Cole wrestled on Dynamite. What have I been saying for weeks, man? Adam Cole wrestled on Dynamite. But it just seemed like that all the cards were in place. Everything just lined up for Kyle O'Reilly to show up, and he did. What's your thoughts on that whole situation and kind of the tension that it looks like is building between the Young Bucks and the formerly known as Undisputed Era?
I really enjoy it right now because I think with Bobby Fish being in there, with Kyle O'Reilly joining, I think it's almost impossible to bring them in without mentioning this history of the Undisputed Era and without mentioning this history with Adam Cole and everything else. And so I think it's important. I think it was smart for them to do that right off the bat instead of just trying to keep everything separate and maybe trying to do their own separate thing for right now. I could see this going a couple of ways, maybe with Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish splitting off from the Elite. Maybe Adam Cole turns on the Elite. Maybe Adam Cole turns on Fish and O'Reilly. You can really go a lot of different ways with this, but it's really cool to see them kind of all back together again. It's really cool to see the original Undisputed Era back together again. His debut was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
The crowd was really hot for it as well. So, kudos to them. It was a lot of fun to see that, and I definitely when I saw it, I texted you. I was like, "Are you watching?" Because Kyle O'Reilly just showed up and is now aligning himself with Adam Cole again. So, but I really, really enjoyed how they did his debut and how they kind of took care of everything.
Yeah, it's really interesting the way that they did that. Of course, like you said, you can't avoid that. Kyle O'Reilly and Adam Cole especially. Like, I don't know all of the history of Bobby Fish, but I know that between O'Reilly and Cole especially, they go all the way back to Ring of Honor. They're best friends, yada, yada, yada. We've talked about that on the show. So it's hard to ignore that. So I think it's fine to go ahead and hit it head on. a lot of fans, though, online, if you read everybody's opinion, which, everybody has one, but a lot of opinions out there are burying Tony Khan in this creative for basically just duplicating a WWE faction. Now I know, again, before they got to WWE, they were aligned in some way, shape, or form. But what do you think of that backlash? And I know that you said that it's good to go ahead and get it out of the way, but
Right.
do you, if you're looking at it from the other side, do you think they have an argument there as far as copy paste the WWE faction?
Not really, because I feel like the example that I could do is if, let's say, Shawn Michaels jumped ship from WWF to go to WCW and Triple H joined along as well. If you don't put together, like, or let's say the Usos go to AEW or whatever, and you don't put them together as a tag team just because WWE did it. It's
Mm-hmm.
to me, it doesn't make sense because they are working together. They're obviously, when they are together, they become some of the most over people in professional wrestling, and that was definitely seen in Ring of Honor. That was definitely seen in NXT as well.
Right.
And so I think it's not necessarily ripping off. I think it's just striking while the iron is hot, and then you can go tell your stories as you've progressed down the line even more. Because of the history that's just all together there. So I don't think it's ripping. I don't think it's lazy creative. I just think it's the story is kind of telling itself.
I got you. Yeah, that makes sense, especially because we're not incredibly far away from Adam Cole's debut as it is. He's
Right,
only been in the company for 3 months.
right.
Bobby Fish came shortly thereafter, and then here comes Kyle O'Reilly. I don't expect Roddy Strong anytime soon, but
I
um,
don't either.
but all that being said, like, it's still relatively new. So, like you said, strike while the iron's hot. It
Yeah,
makes sense. I do think Cole's going to turn on Fish and O'Reilly. I think Fish and O'Reilly can go off and be a tag team on their own, and
yeah.
Cole will stay in this elite storyline. I don't know how quickly that happens, but I do think it happens um, probably around the time Kenny Omega comes back. We'll see. I don't know.
I was going to say probably Revolution.
Something like that. Yeah,
Yeah,
something like that. We'll let this burn for a little bit, but I do anticipate him turning on those guys. The main event of Dynamite this week, you have MJFTR. For those of you not keeping score at home, that is FTR and MJF in a trios match against Sting, Darby Allin, and CM Punk. Man, what was your first reaction when CM Punk comes out dressed up like Sting with the war paint and the scorpion tights and all this other stuff?
it made sense to me because Darby Allin's got face paint, Sting's got face paint. If you're tagging with him, you got to put on face paint. Like it's you
Right.
just you have to. It's a given.
It's a
I loved
rule.
it.
Yep.
I popped for it. I thought it was absolutely amazing. Um, it was so funny, but it was funny, but it made sense at the same time. So I was definitely all for it. And Sting's face paint I thought looked absolutely amazing at the same time. Like I loved it.
So
I absolutely loved it.
somebody took some time and did
Yeah.
that for sure. I mean, I know that Sting normally does his own face paint. He's
Yeah.
been very open and vocal about that. No secrets there, but somebody helped him with that because he ain't
Yeah.
doing that.
And if he
But
is, then my goodness, dude, you're
right,
amazing at it.
exactly. So all that to say, it looked really good. I was a huge fan of it, and the match was actually really good. I was
Yeah.
entertained by the match. Um, and of course, the finish was really cool. Just a cool way to wrap up 2021 as far as Dynamite goes. Well, not really because we still have one more. But anyway, it was a good feel good kind of thing.
Yeah.
Really good, really interesting stuff. Rampage though, on Christmas night,
Yeah.
saw the TNT Championship change hands. Cody Rhodes defeating Sammy Guevara. A lot of mixed feelings about this one. I'm hearing a
Yeah.
lot of stuff online that people don't think Sammy's run was that good, that it should have been better. I highly disagree with that. Well, what's your thoughts on the whole situation?
My thoughts are I don't think Cody's gonna hold the TNT championship for long. And I think Sammy's probably gonna win it back from him. Maybe at Revolution, maybe at I guess tonight. No, I don't think he's fighting. I don't think they're fighting for it tonight. But I think they're going to do something soon where Sami probably wins it back. I think it's just a great way for Cody to seem like he's the hero for himself, but is still slowly turning heel without realizing he's turning heel, which is the same sermon I've been preaching on this podcast for like 2 or 3 months now. It feels like.
Uh-huh.
But it is what it is. The match was really good. Cody is still one of the not I want to say one of the best in the ring, but he still can hold his own. Sammy Guevara is absolutely amazing in the ring, like we talked about last week on our year end recap.
Yep.
But it was very shocking. I kind of see why they did it, but it did kind of feel like it was way too soon to take the title off of Sammy, and it kind of feels like it may derail him a little. I think we'll know more tonight after watching Dynamite. I think we'll know a lot more about kind of where everything is going with this, but it did feel very, very soon. But I wanted to ask you, did you think it was more shocking that Cody won the title or that Hook no sold a pile driver? Because that was a big debate as well.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, him no selling that pile driver was ridiculous. Oh
But
my
Taz
gosh.
did that all the time too, so I think
But
it
he
was
did, that's
a
true.
nice callback to his dad, like
Sure,
to Taz doing it. I think that was great.
that's true.
Yeah,
Ultimately, though, I think the TNT Championship, I don't think it shocks me. I
yeah,
really don't, because I think I'm not saying that it was too soon to take the title off of Sammy, because obviously he had a great run. You mentioned us talking about it last week. Go make sure you check out that episode available in our archives. We put over Sammy Guevara pretty hard last week, but I don't think it was necessarily a too soon thing. I
mm-mm.
think it was a way. I think I said this last week too. I think it's more of a way to build Cody than the tear down Sammy. Because I
Yeah,
think that Cody has been in this state of flux for so long that if he is going to be a star, because he's not going to wrestle much longer, he's been
right,
vocal about that. He's got a kid now. Um, so if he's going to make any kind of run in the main event scene, you have to find a way to get that started. And I think this
right,
was a good way to get it started, because I don't think it necessarily hurts Sammy as far as a popularity standpoint, because nobody likes Cody right now.
right.
So it's not going to hurt Sammy there. Maybe he does get the title back. I don't know. We'll wait and see. I think
Yeah,
you're right. I think tonight
I
we'll
think this week's
see.
going to tell us a whole lot about the direction because it could very. I think it could very easily flip a switch either way. Of you know, did it derail Sammy, or is this a way to kind of build Sammy up in defeat while also kind of telling the story with Cody at the same time?
Right.
Because it could very easily because we've seen this. I mean, with I hate comparing AEW and WWE together, but we've seen this in WWE a few times where we thought it was the end of the world sometimes, and all of a sudden we realized next week, oh, this is like they're doing something here with it, and we've also like said, well, we'll wait till next week because it could be really good or really special, and then it's just absolutely nothing at the same time. So I think only time will tell about what happened on Rampage with the title change and everything.
Yep. And like you said, it was a great match. Nobody is hurt from winning or losing that match. I
Right.
thought it was great. It was honestly one of the first Rampages I've watched in forever, just because I knew what, spoiler alert, they recorded this before Christmas night. So
Yeah.
we all knew what was going to happen. So I wanted to make sure to watch it. Um, One more thing from AEW before we move on. This coming Wednesday, not tonight, if you're listening to this on Wednesday, but next Wednesday, the first episode on TBS kicks off with the world title rematch.
Yeah.
Hangman Adam Page and Bryan Danielson. Man, I'm not asking you to predict who's going to win the match, but this is awful soon to be able to pull this one back out. Do you think they're trying to just, excuse me, get this out of the way so that Hangman can have a different opponent at Revolution? What's your thoughts on what's going on with this?
I think I think part of it is it's the first one on TBS, so you definitely want to
Yeah, makes
have
sense.
something to boost the ratings for sure. And I think this absolutely will do it. I think Paige is going to win this one clean. I think they honestly might wrestle 59 minutes again, and with like 10 seconds left on the clock, Paige gets the 1, 2, 3. I think that would be amazing if they did that way, because it's a great way to continue to build Bryan Danielson as this massive force that he is in pro wrestling,
Right.
while also elevating Paige even more. And so I think that would be really cool. And I think this is a great way to introduce AEW on TBS while also kind of maybe splitting them off. Maybe Kenny returns. Maybe somebody else steps up right now. But I think it is a great way to kind of split them off for a little bit, and then maybe we revisit that in a month or two.
I agree. I think Hangman does win, and I've said it all along. I think he should. I don't think there's any reason that Bryan Danielson should win that championship right now.
Right.
I honestly don't know that he should ever win the championship, but that's a debate for another time. I don't think that it's time to take title off a Page, but I do think, like you said, I think this is the time to split these guys off, whether they wrestle 59 minutes or 5 minutes. I think it's time to split them off. That way you can go ahead and start building towards Revolution. It's at the beginning of March. So I think you got a little bit of time, but still, I think it's, like you said, fresh audience, TBS, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think it's a perfect spot for a shocking debut, maybe a Bray Wyatt or maybe a Braun Strowman or maybe
Johnny Gargano.
Don't even go there.
Cody versus Johnny Gargano for the TNT Championship.
Listen, let's go down that rabbit hole for a second. I wasn't going to bring up Johnny Gargano. I was not. But it's been surfaced online that he said that he's very interested in AEW and the AEW is very interested in him and he wants to have matches against the Kennys and the blah, blah, whatever.
Right.
And everybody is now saying, or at least Meltzer, the one that preaches the absolute gospel. If you're not watching this on YouTube, you can hear the sarcasm in my voice. Meltzer says it's basically a lock that Johnny Gargano is debuting at the Cleveland show, which is not far away. I think it's a couple weeks. I'm not sure.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
I don't know when the Cleveland, but that he's debuting in the Cleveland show. Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. But I, in my heart of hearts, believe that Johnny's going to wait until Candace has a baby to go wrestle again. I really think beginning of March. I think
she's due beginning of March, and
I think so.
And and that the Cleveland show I think is in the middle of January.
Yes, I'm pretty sure it's in January. Yep.
See, because I could see him kind of debuting, being there for a couple of weeks, and then maybe he's in a feud with somebody and they take him out and he's out for a couple of weeks and then comes back or whatever. I honestly, I could see the Cleveland thing. I think he could even, maybe not even sign necessarily with the company. I think he will make an appearance at the Cleveland Dynamite or Rampage or whatever. I think he might make an appearance there and then set something up down the line whenever he's ready to come back full time. But, I think even if he does, whatever he does do, I think it's going to be absolutely crazy wherever he pops up. I think it's going to be so much fun to see him just kind of doing his own thing on the independent scene. But if he does go back to WWE as well, which I think is a pretty decent possibility, I think that would be fine as well, as long as he's probably comfortable being with mid Carter and nothing else, because I think that's his ceiling limit inside of the main roster of WWE.
Well, I think it's a good possibility that he could go back to just NXT as well. Yeah. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. He's the one guy that I feel like left WWE, and there's a solid chance that he would come back. You know what I mean?
Especially the way that he left. Like, especially he got to have the final send off and everything. Like, they didn't even give Cole that. And so I think that's tells a whole lot about his relationship with Triple H and with Shawn and everybody inside of NXT.
Yep. So I think there's a good possibility that he could just come straight back. Who knows?
Yep.
But anyway, if you are just now finding us, welcome to the Pipebomb Wrestling Podcast. This is the show that is for the fans, by the fans. Thank you for stumbling upon our show. If this is your first time, we hope you are enjoying yourself. If you are a longtime supporter of the show, we thank you for that support. We would not be where we are if it wasn't for you. I am your phenomenal host, Mr. Podcasting, Chris Belcher. You can follow me at Chris Belcher24 on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The show is at PBW Podcast. My co-host is with me, Mr. Andy York, the young buck. You can follow him at Andy_PBWP. So make sure you give us a follow on social media. We have talked all things AEW. We've talked rumors, this, that, and the other. Of course, of Johnny Gargano, who recently left NXT in one of the more heartbreaking things that I've seen on television in 2021, but it's fine. Speaking of NXT, though, before we get to our WWE Day 1 preview, I have to bring up NXT from last week because we saw the appearance, I guess this was last Tuesday,
Yep.
of AJ Styles in NXT for only the second time ever. Now, I bring this up because AJ is not on the Day 1 card as of this recording. I have a strong feeling that AJ versus Omos could get added with all of the COVID stuff going on. If something else were to happen, that's easily a match that they could add unless
Yep.
Omos is involved in the COVID stuff. But I think that could easily be added. But let's talk about this whole situation before we get to the pay-per-view preview. AJ, NXT, Grayson Waller. Man, I hope he's not going down there just to lose to Grayson Waller.
Probably is. He probably is. I think that's.
Why?
I think they got big things planned for Grayson Waller. Which
Don't do that.
we talked about this when Johnny kind of did his farewell, and Grayson Waller is the one that attacked him. I think everybody was like, "Why would you pick him?" And then the next day, he posted that video or that picture, the video of him on Twitter. I don't know if you saw it or not. His alarm when he woke up, excuse me, his alarm when he woke up was Rebel Heart, Johnny's music, and it was from that moment I was like, okay, this kid kind of gets it. Like he could end up being WWE's version of MJF if they
Right.
right. And I think this is kind of the stepping point for that. If AJ and Omos doesn't happen at Day 1, I would not be shocked if AJ versus Grayson Waller happens at Day 1 as well. Which I could definitely see AJ losing that match as well, which would not be very well or not be good for anybody. But it's just a weird thing that AJ would go down to NXT to do this. I think it's very, very weird that they're kind of going that way.
Right. Because you could have picked anybody. You didn't have to pick AJ to do, like, any established star could go down there and
Matt Riddle's already down there with MSK. Like
right. So you could have sent Finn Balor back down there just to be like, hey, you think you run this show? Remember, I'm still here, yada yada yada, whatever.
Cesaro.
Yeah. What a lot of people would have made more sense, but AJ, whatever. Anyway, AJ and Omos, man, we've been preaching it for a long time. It's time for these two to go their separate ways, and they finally have. I find it very interesting, kind of the way that it happened. You know, it was more like Omos was turning his back on AJ,
right?
Whereas in the past, when you've got big bodyguard and small guy, normally the small guy gets mad at the big bodyguard and he's the one that turns, but this was the other way around. I found it very interesting. Of course, they have to have a match, but let's get this thing over with pretty quick. Come on now.
Yeah. And I think Omos is going to, no matter what happens, I think Omos is going to get the win. And I think he should. I really do. I think it's important for him to get that win because they obviously are going to have big things planned for him. I think he's definitely going to get the Braun Strowman push pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. And so I think him kind of beating AJ gives him that boost even more to the main event without actually hurting AJ because, you know, he's 7'8" basically and can kill anybody. So, you know, it definitely doesn't hurt AJ.
Well, if Omos doesn't win, this whole last year is for nothing.
Yeah.
You know, because what happened? I equate this to Shawn Michaels and Diesel. Well,
yeah,
Shawn Michaels brought Diesel in 1993, and he was his bodyguard all the way through the end of 94 when they split up. Okay, 94 they split up at Survivor Series. The next weekend, Diesel wins the World Championship at Madison Square Garden in 8 seconds. That was in November. We marched toward WrestleMania. Who's his WrestleMania opponent? Shawn Michaels. Who does he beat? Shawn Michaels. Okay, that makes sense. So I'm not saying put the world title on Omos, but it just, that's the way this pattern's going to go. So Omos has got to win.
Yeah, and I think it would not shock me if Omos isn't WWE champion in the next 6 months to a year.
Please no.
I think it's a given that he's going to be I think he's the one that might be Damian Priest for the U.S. Championship. I think that could definitely happen.
Okay, I can see that.
And then I think that's fine, and Priest can go after the WWE Championship and let Damian Priest win it because he has been one of the best U.S. champions of the last 5-10 years, really. And I think he's kind of shown that he can be WWE champion. But I think Omos is going to win a title definitely in the next 6 months to a year.
You're probably right. Okay. All right, let's run down the day one card. A lot of things jump out here. We mentioned no AJ on the card, no Charlotte on the card either. So
Yeah.
that kind of jumps out to me. Of course, you've got the fatal four way. Probably still going to be a fatal four way. We'll see if somebody replaces Seth Rollins. But anyway, Big E defends the WWE Championship against Seth Rollins, Bobby Lashley, and Kevin Owens. You've got the Universal Championship on the other side, Roman Reigns, Brock Lesnar. Shinsuke Nakamura versus Sami Zayn for the Intercontinental title. The Usos and the New Day for the SmackDown tag titles. RK Bro versus the Street Profits for the Raw tag team titles. Edge versus The Miz. Drew McIntyre versus Madcap Moss. And Becky Lynch versus Liv Morgan, theoretically, for the Raw Women's Championship. Man, it's a loaded pay-per-view. It really is. It's a lot of nice matches, a couple of filler matches, but that's to be expected. What really sticks out to you is something that you're obviously we're going to talk some about both main events, and Edge and the Miz. But other than those kind of things, what sticks out to you as far as something you really want to see?
I'm really looking forward to that Becky Lynch Liv Morgan match. I think it's going to be really good. Their first one on Raw was really good as well, and I think this one's going to be, excuse me, just as well or just as good. I don't think Liv is going to win. I think I think they're telling a story. I would not be shocked if we get this match again at WrestleMania this year with Liv versus Becky, and I think Liv could win it there. But I think we're definitely on the road to that. But I think this is going to be laying the foundation. Becky probably will cheat again to win, or maybe get herself disqualified, or whatever the case is. But I really think that we're heading down a really interesting path with this. But I definitely think it's going to be a really great match, and I think it's going to live up to the hype that the first one did for sure.
I mean, I don't say I don't necessarily agree because I don't think it'll be Liv Morgan at WrestleMania. However, I do think Becky will find a way to win this one again. Eventually, I don't know what's going to happen with Liv because I don't think she's going to be. I'm not as high on Liv Morgan as everybody else is. Let's put it that way. I don't think Liv's promos are that great. I think she struggles a bit. I think she shows some nervousness, which again, it's fine. She's never really had the solo spotlight, so I'm not putting her down for that. I'm just saying that I'm not as high on her as everybody else is. I'll tell you what I am really looking forward to is both the tag matches at day one. RK Bro and the Street Profits on one side, and then Usos and the New Day on the other side. Again, Usos and New Day can't have a bad match if they try.
Right.
And then RK Bro and Street Profits. I mean, I think it's gonna be really good. I think this could be a situation, or at least the turning point. Turning point, not the right word. It could be a nice segue into WWE putting some more focus on tag team wrestling that is good.
Yeah.
Because if you have the New Day and the Usos feuding, and then you're having this tournament with RK Bro and Alpha Academy and all those kind of guys, if you're putting that focus on tag teams and then the tag teams deliver, like why not? You know what I mean? So I think that'll be two really, really good matches. Let's talk about Edge and The Miz real quick. We had the awesome bloodbath for the renewal of the vows on Monday Night Raw. Eric Bischoff showed up.
Yeah, that was weird.
It was it was a good time, man. I loved it. I thought it was great. Obviously, anytime there's a wedding in WWE, something is going to happen, and Edge got him in a bloodbath. What do you think about all this? I guess if I'm making a prediction, and then I'll let you weigh in. I think Miz wins this match, and I think we're absolutely headed towards a mixed tag match, maybe even at WrestleMania, maybe Royal Rumble, but maybe even WrestleMania as we add Beth Phoenix.
Yeah, no, I think that's. I think we're definitely getting that match at some point, or we're getting at least Beth versus Maurice at some point, and maybe doing like Edge versus Miz, Beth versus Maurice, and then we do a tag match or do a mixed tag match or something like that. But I definitely think we're heading in that direction. So I agree. I think Miz will win, Maurice will get involved, and then probably after the match, Beth comes out and attacks everybody and drops Miz with I forget what she calls it, the glam slam. There you go, the glam slam. So I think that's definitely where we're heading, which is fine. I think it's going to be fun. But I just would like to have Edge do something else at WrestleMania. So please
Me
don't do
too.
that match at WrestleMania.
That's why I'm kind of hoping we go ahead and end this thing at the Royal Rumble.
Yeah.
You let Miz get a win, get himself back on track. Here, you have Edge and Beth get the feel-good win at the Royal Rumble. Okay, move on. Let them both do something else at WrestleMania, for sure. But what about, man, with all this COVID stuff that's going on, a lot of people were dropped off the Madison Square Garden house show on Sunday night, and you had Edge and Kevin Owens in a steel cage match at the main event. How cool would it have been to be in the crowd at Madison Square Garden, and all of a sudden Edge's music hits and he's going to be in the main event? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Plus, Edge versus Kevin Owens would be a fantastic feud, a fantastic match. So if we don't have anything else planned for either guy at WrestleMania, put those two together, and I think that would be magic. I think that would be so much fun to watch that.
I think it would be great. I mean, and this is the first house show that Edge has wrestled at since he's been back. I'm pretty sure. So if you read Edge's social media, it was, he was on his way to Detroit for Monday Night Raw, and then he gets a call, hey, make a pit stop at Madison Square Garden. You're going to wrestle in the main event in a steel cage match.
Yeah.
It's like.
Plus, I don't think, especially the old school wrestlers, I don't think they're going to turn down an opportunity to wrestle at Madison Square Garden, even if it is a house show. So I think that was definitely the right call.
Yep, and I think it's awesome that it worked out the way that it did. Kevin Owens is in the main event against Seth Rollins, Bobby Lashley, and Big E for the WWE Championship. A lot of people said that this match was stacked this way so that Kevin Owens could get pinned or whatever, since he was basically on his way out the door, and then he resigns. Kevin Owens resigns with the company. Because he re-signed with the company, do you think there's a chance he walks out with the WWE Championship, or do you think Big E still finds a way to win?
Neither. I don't think Kevin's going to win, and I think Big E's not going to win at all. I think if it's not Seth, I think whoever replaces Seth, if there is a replacement, will win, which AJ Styles is free. And then I think Bobby Lashley could win the title back, and then we get Big E versus Bobby at WrestleMania. I think we could get that match as well. Or if Seth is healthy, put it on Seth. But I don't think that Kevin Owens will necessarily win. Now, if he does win, I'm more than happy to be wrong, because I think he definitely deserves to be WWE champion. And if Big E retains, I think that's fine as well. But I think they're going to probably try to take the title off of Big E heading into the Rumble.
I think obviously just by the way that he has, by the year that he's had, I think Seth Rollins is the guy to put it on. But I like Kevin Owens coming out of this with the title. I think that would be, he deserves it. He hasn't been world champion since he lost it right before WrestleMania 33. Yeah, stupid Goldberg. Well, I'm going to blame that one on Vince McMahon and Brock Lesnar, because that's the only reason Goldberg got the title anyway, so that Brock Lesnar could get the title.
Yeah, I know.
Which Brock Lesnar
could have did not need the title. Brock
Lesnar could have gotten the title the month after WrestleMania or whatever. At least let Chris Jericho win it at 33, and then Brock could beat Jericho, whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, but all that to say, no matter who comes out of the title or comes out of the match with the title, it's going to be great. I'm really looking forward to this Fatal 4-Way. It's literally the 4 of the top 5 guys on Monday Night Raw without AJ Styles in a match for the championship. I think that's great. Kind of makes me wonder, like, where do you go to Mania with the title, because you're really putting all your eggs in this basket, because it seems clear that the Royal Rumble winner is probably going to come out of SmackDown, and it makes all the sense in the world to be Brock Lesnar, because Brock and Roman, we've seen interesting developments with this whole Paul Heyman thing.
Yeah.
I think it leans we're really leaning towards Brock winning the title here, but I still go with the theory that Roman keeps it and Brock enters the Rumble and wins the Rumble.
And I think if Brock does do that, I think Bobby does win the WWE Championship. And I think at WrestleMania, I'm still going to go with it until it does not happen, which if it does not happen, then, I'm wrong, which I'm used to being. I think WrestleMania, we're getting Bobby Lashley versus Brock Lesnar for the WWE Championship, Roman Reigns versus The Rock for the Universal Championship. And I think it could all start at the Rumble. Could all start at day one. I really do. I think it could all start at day one as well. But I think those are two viable options or two viable ways that we could go. Excuse me, for Brock to win the Rumble, not do Brock versus Roman again, do Brock versus Bobby, which is a match that a lot of people want to see, and then you can have Roman versus The Rock at WrestleMania at the same time.
I think that's a really good possibility. Obviously, I would love to see that. I think that makes a lot of sense because, like you said, you get those two matches that you've been wanting. But WWE being WWE, it's probably going to end up being Roman and Brock again, which is why, again, I'm sticking to my guns, man. I just think that Roman Reigns loses the title at day one.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Roman enters the Rumble and wins it, and we get the rematch. I think that you could see Paul Heyman go away for a while, reappear at WrestleMania, help Roman win the title, and then they're back together and all is good in the dynasty or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. I could also see that happen maybe at the Rumble as well. Maybe
True.
he comes back at the Rumble, and then because Roman with Paul Heyman versus whoever he's fighting at WrestleMania, I think is that they work better together because Brock is doing so well by himself right now. I don't think he needs Paul anymore right now.
Sure, he doesn't.
And so I think that's a good way to kind of separate those two, finish the feud, and then move on to WrestleMania.
Well, yeah, at least not for this run. Heel Brock Lesnar needs Paul Heyman. This run of Brock Lesnar, no. He doesn't need.
He's by himself. He's fine.
He just needs his flannel, his overalls, and a microphone.
It reminds me of early Brock with Kurt Angle. Like this Brock Lesnar reminds me of early Brock with Kurt Angle, doing funny stuff, having a good time, whatever. And I think this is the best version of Brock we've had in years, and so it's a lot of fun to see it.
Well, I think why it reminds you of that is that's the only time Brock Lesnar's ever been a babyface. That's it.
Yeah.
Like that run and this one. It's his only ever babyface runs. So, and Brock's a really good babyface when you let him be himself. If you try to put him in a box, that's not going to happen. It's not going to work right.
He can be fun and then flip the switch to a killer in 2 seconds, and you believe both. So it makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So you got day one coming up this Saturday night, a loaded card, really. As we really get ready to put a bow on this episode, we always have to hand out our high spots and our turd sandwiches, but always, as pay-per-views come up, we have to predict what we think is going to be the high spot of the show, what we think is going to be the low spot of the show. I will go first, and I will say the low spot of the show. Man, we didn't even talk about, before we get to that, we didn't even talk about Shinsuke Nakamura versus Sami Zayn for the Intercontinental title. I'm having flashbacks of NXT TakeOver Dallas.
If they let them do it,
give these guys like 20 minutes. Dude, they're going to tear the house down. Let
this open the show and let them go 20 minutes of what they did at TakeOver. And absolutely. I promise you, the first day in 2022, you'll already have a match of the year contender.
Yep.
With this match. Let it happen, please.
I completely agree. I'll go with my high spot first. I am going to say that my high spot of day one is going to be the Fatal 4-Way for the Raw, for the WWE Championship. Even if Seth Rollins gets taken out of it, I think obviously you replace him with AJ Styles. You could replace him with Dolph Ziggler. It wouldn't make any sense, but Dolph would be really good in that match.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know who else you would replace Rollins with unless Rollins is going to end up being there. Not going to speculate on vaccination status for Rollins and Becky and all that kind of stuff. Who knows? But I think that's going to be the match. That's going to be my high spot of the night. What's yours?
There are like 3 or 4 that could be, because you got both main events. You got Edge and Miz. I think my high spot, though, and you kind of already talked about it, I think my high spot will be Uday. Wow. Usos. Usos versus New Day.
The Uday and the Newsos.
Yeah. The Usos and the New Day, I think, are going to steal the show like they always do. And I think it's going to be so much fun to watch both those guys, all 4 guys, especially with King Woods now and all that's going on with the gimmicks and the characters and everything else. I think that's going to be probably match stealer of the night.
I agree, obviously, because those 2 teams just, again, like I said earlier, they couldn't have a bad match if they tried, and they're not going to.
Nope.
So I definitely think that's on tap to be match of the night, as well as Sami Zayn and Shinsuke Nakamura, like we just talked about. Folks, don't sleep on that. If you're listening to this, don't sleep on that match. I'm telling you. But obviously for me, the turd sandwich of the show, the match that just sticks out like a sore thumb is Madcap Moss against Drew McIntyre. Andy, why is this not Baron Corbin? Like, I get that. Is he injured? Because he didn't participate in the street fight on SmackDown last week either.
Yeah,
why is this not
he might
Corbin?
be. He might be injured. I don't know. I think this is the pre-show. I think it's just get it out of the way. I think it's a good way. I think it's a good way just to get Drew on the card, and I think that's what they're trying to do. Is just to keep Drew on the card, keep him kind of strong, let him be a viable contender for the Rumble, let him be a viable contender maybe at WrestleMania for Roman. I think there's a lot of ways that you could go with this, but I definitely think it's just there to be there. So I agree that this is my turd sandwich as well as this match.
I think you're right. I think it's finding a way to get Drew on the card, and that's that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All right, man. We have gone through a lot of stuff, as we do here on the Pipebomb Wrestling Podcast. The wrestling world just keeps turning and turning. We talked a lot about AEW, a lot about day one. Anything else that we left off or that we missed that you want to add before we sign off?
Not that I can think of, man. It's just been a busy 2 weeks of wrestling and holidays and everything else. But, I'm excited to start the new year, and this is a great way to do it. I think WWE should do this pay-per-view more often. Kind of the fresh way to start off the year in pro wrestling and in WWE. So I'm all for more of this. So,
I mean, I agree. I was more partial to the New Year's Revolution title. I think that's better than day one. And you could do it on New Year's Day, just like this one. But I agree, man. I think a New Year's Day pay-per-view, especially because it falls on a weekend this year, I think that's the way to go. I dig it. I don't know how they're going to do it with it, when New Year's Day doesn't fall on a weekend, but we'll see, because all the rumors indicate that this is going to be a staple, like you just said, in the pay-per-view calendar.
Yeah. Plus, because nobody wants a pay-per-view in December, so don't do a pay-per-view in December. Day one, January, Rumble, you're off to the races. I think it's a smart way to do that.
I totally agree. All right. And if you did not check out, we did not stop producing episodes throughout the holidays, ladies and gentlemen. Our 2021 year-end review is an incredible episode. You do not want to miss it. Make sure you go back and check that out. Give us your feedback. We hand out our best of awards. Best wrestlers in AEW, WWE, best matches in AEW and WWE, worst things that we've seen, all of those kind of things. We love your feedback at PBW Podcast. Make sure you listen to the episode and give us your feedback. Also, we did a great debate between between us and our buddy Trent Osborne, where we talked about the PWI 500 of 2021. Would love your feedback on that episode as well, too, because we get into it about Roman Reigns and Kenny Omega, who's number one, that kind of deal. So we want your feedback on that. Also, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't listened to it yet, what the heck are you waiting for? Starrcade 97, the episode is up. It is live, and it is as much fun as I remember. I promise. Oh, it's so good.
It's great. It's fantastic.
Andy, what did you think of it?
I loved it. It's just, it's a great listen. If you're having a rough day, if you're having a down day, go listen to it. It'll make your day better. It'll brighten up your day. Trust me. So go check it out. Go give it a listen.
Oh my goodness. Starrcade 97, we talked all about why Sting should have won the title and all the circumstances. I'm not going to get started. Okay, here we go.
He's already getting mad.
The blood's already boiling. All right, ladies and germs, thank you for being with us today on the Pipebomb Wrestling Podcast. We hope you have had a good time. For Andy, I am Chris. Thank you so much for joining us. Make sure you catch us this weekend for a day one recap. And thank you for being a supportive listener to the Pipebomb Wrestling Podcast. We will catch you guys down the road.